You ever wonder why you have no friends? You're older, maybe in your 50s, 55 perhaps, and you look around and there's not a friend in sight. According to Verywell Mind, there's also an article that states as many as 27 to 30% of millennial aged people do not have any friends, or at least not close friends. And now as you get older, it only gets worse. But there's a bunch of reasons for that. I want to talk about that because now, since I've retired way back now, almost rolling on 2 years very shortly, I realize that those friends are much far and fewer between. Even friends that I had many, many years ago aren't even that close anymore. And while I find myself reaching out from time to time, they just doesn't seem to reciprocate. I reach out once, I reach out twice, and there's nothing. It's dead air. And the one time that they do respond, either through a text or an email or a call, it's only done quickly, shortly, to the point, and usually never rebutted after that. It's a sad state of affairs. As we age, we clearly see the fact that friends are much harder to find. Priorities change, attitudes change. And while we all get busy in our busy lives, it's obvious that a lot of people just don't value friendships, or at least that's the perception, that many people just don't value friendships like maybe they once did. When you grow up and you're young and you're in school, it's easy to meet friends. It's easy to meet young people just like yourself, okay? People that, you all share the same interests. You get out there, you're in the playground, everybody's cheering and hollering. And, quite often you know what it's like, where everybody just seems to get along. Everybody has a good time. Everybody's having fun. And just everybody's in the same mindset. So everybody is open-minded and everybody is feeling good about what they're doing and the time they're enjoying with each other. And therefore, it's very easy. Friendship just comes easy and naturally. But a lot of that as well, there's not a care in the world. A lot of people just don't have. When you're young, you don't have a lot else going on in your life. You have maybe your favorite game system, possibly a little bit of homework. And outside of that, you look forward to jumping on your bike and riding to your friend's house. I think many years ago, some of my best friends were in the neighborhood. We'd get on our bike, we'd ride to each other's neighborhood or to each other's house, hang out for a while. Of course, maybe watch a movie or two. Then we'd head on down to the park, maybe play down there. And then we'd go down to the mall, grab a Slurpee, and we just enjoy hanging out. It didn't even matter what we were doing half the time. But there was a common factor. There was a common thread that brought us together in the first place. When you're young, it seems easy. It seems almost too easy, almost effortless, if you will. But quite often, as we age, we get a little more set in our ways. It's not just that little commonality that brings us together and keeps us tightly bonded together. It takes much more than that now as an adult to find that commonality, to find that need, that want to have friends. And it's a harsh truth, what we're all accepting, the fact that as we age, friends are much far and fewer between. As I go on with my life, I look around and I have a wonderful family, and I'm more than, absolutely ecstatic and grateful that I have that, because many people don't even have that. And without having a great spouse and kids around, I can't help but think that, where's the friends? Where'd they all go? I think back and I reflect, and a lot of you do as well. As we roll through our lives, as we're young ones and we have these friends and then things start to change. You know what it was like, in your teens, you had that best friend or maybe a few good friends you'd hang out with, go play some hockey, go ride some bikes, go have some fun, play some video games, watch a movie together. But then that all started to slowly shift. One of you started dating, and then maybe a different friend started dating somebody else. And then maybe you started getting on board, and, everybody started, moving on, doing different things. Let's be honest. At that age, you're all of a sudden starting to think of, like different things. Your priorities starting to shift. It's no longer just about going to play hockey. It's, I have a date tonight, or I'm going out with so-and-so, and things start to change. And, even the fact that you might have had an amazing friendship with that person and some of your best friends, you were bonded tightly when you were young, it starts to change. And so as you're rolling into your 20s, and this is what I often found too, is you're kind of rolling into your late teens, your early 20s, you start to see that transition much more aggressively. You start to see everybody's picking different priorities, dates, work, jobs start. People are getting out of school, graduating high school, 18, 19. Next thing you know, they're in the job front. Next thing you know, it's not by intention, but all of a sudden your best friend just doesn't necessarily have as much time. You pick up the phone, you call them, and they say, well, I got to work this afternoon. Sorry, I can't. Let's try maybe next weekend. And then it becomes more of an excuse to not hang out. See, because as you age and, you get into, I guess, the real world, the adult world, as it were, priorities definitely shift. You don't have that free time to hang out and talk nothing and just have fun doing that. See, because as we age, we start dating, then we start building families. Those priorities change. They start moving off. And now to find that time to hang out with a buddy with absolutely nothing to do but just chit chat and grab a Slurpee, those days, those hours are much harder and far and fewer between. Then you get into the workspace, and then your idea of what friendship looks like starts to shift. You meet people, like-minded people at your work. Quite often, a lot of them have similar priorities. A lot of them just feel like they're in the same mindset. Some of them went to school in the same way. You're all trying to pull together in the same fashion for a common goal. Whether you're in a corporate environment or whatever your job is, you now start making sort of what you perceive as friendship in the workspace. But as you start to adopt some of those friendships, you find that, that old friend from high school seems immature. Or then you start looking back, and in some cases you start realizing, well, they're busy anyway. I've got new life over here. I've got some friends at work, and we're going hanging out after work sometimes, and your overall attitude starts to shift. And as you look back from a 55-year-old now retired, I look back and I think this is exactly how the evolution of friendship comes and goes. But it's not all for naught, because I want to share about some of the ways that I found that you can kind of move this on and actually kind of reignite friendship. But as you get through life, you find yourself just sort of enthralled with, advancing your career, building that family, working for 50 weeks of the year just to save up for those 2 weeks. So you can now spend those 2 weeks dedicated with your family, go head off, maybe grab that camper, head on for a trip down to the mountains, or, do a 2-week ski vacation, or possibly 2 weeks in Mexico, whatever it is. You spend your entire year now focused on trying to advance your career, trying to make the boss happy, trying to make everybody at your workplace impressed by the activities and the efforts that you put in. And in the meantime, you do all of that for all of those 50 weeks, only to find out 2 weeks you have spent to dedicate to relationships. Because a lot of us, you get home from work, you know how it is, you just don't have the time. You get home from work, you find yourself, a little bit tired. I think you just want to head out and maybe grab a dinner, or even just settle in at home. Maybe as the young ones, a lot of us have young ones. And so you spend a good part of, the 10 to 20 years raising the young ones. And of course, a lot of that means is sports, feeding, bedtime stories, and all of those things means all of those priorities and spare time just go out the window. We don't have time. As we age, we find ourselves running out of time much, much faster, at a much faster rate than we ever did. And isn't it weird how, as we age, the days just seem to be going much, much faster? It's actually a very, very sad state of affairs, but there is a strong and stark reality, though, that friendship isn't exactly what you thought it was when you were young. As we age, it becomes more of a matter of convenience. In some cases, it's more of a matter of leverage. It's sad, but when you start working in the corporate space, and a lot of times your job takes you down a path where you now start to sometimes see friendship as more of a leverage opportunity to climb a ladder, to get in the good books, to get somebody to have, give you a hand, maybe moving along and getting yourself that next promotion. Sometimes you buddy up with the boss. Sometimes you buddy up with somebody who knows the boss. And so often I found myself kind of shying away from that very situation. It's quite sad and disheartening when you see others doing it, though, because your own internal clock and integrity and the moral compass that you live by and focus and direct yourself by, in many cases, just means that I just want to show up and do my job. Meantime, we've got that guy over there trying to leverage his relationship with the boss and others uppers to try to move up the ladder, and those are the ones that are quite often doing that. But that's what a lot of times as we age, we find ourselves making friends, and I'll use the word, and I quote, friends that are based more on leverage and, opportunities and, those situations that are there to hopefully get us another foot up the rung. And that's what friendship eventually becomes. Now, of course, there's lots of friendships. You can meet people at work. And once in a while, there's one or two that actually stick and they evolve into something really, really good. But I promise you this, what I've seen time and time and time again, and it's unfortunate because there are truly authentic friendships out there. But there's a sad state of reality that there's also people that utilize you, and you may not even know that. You don't know it until later, once you no longer have something to offer. Once whatever it is that you were providing, whether it was leverage, they thought you had something to offer, maybe they had a benefit by getting you on board, and all of a sudden you notice these people at work were ultra friendly. This would go on and on and on until you no longer had anything to offer. Some of which, of course, maybe you change a job role, or maybe they advance their own career. Next thing you know, they no longer need you. Then the colors became quite clear. All of a sudden they sort of ghost you, they disappear. The same thing when you retire. Those people that you thought were friends at work, and all of a sudden, lo and behold, they're not there anymore. They disappear. You leave and they have your number and they claim that, they can call you anytime, and you open the invitation and say, hey, I'm retiring. I'm not dead yet, so give me a shout. And they say, yeah, sure, no problem. Things are busy right now, but I'll give you a holler as soon as I can. This goes on months in, months out, months in, months out. And then you think back and you think, where was so-and-so? I thought they were my friend. Actually, I put a little stock in the fact that I believed they were my friend. But it's unfortunate as you move on, and once you retire, you truly see that, or you move on, or you no longer become valuable in some monetary fashion for said individuals, then it becomes much clearer that maybe they weren't your friends in the first place, you see. So now as we age, we start to realize and become a little bit more wise to the fact that maybe they're not truly friends. And maybe those people that we work with are not really our friends in the first place. We actually believe that there might be some value to a friendship like that. But 95% of the time, those people we work with are there for similar reasons, and that's merely just for a paycheck, swapping time for money, as it were. But time and time again, as we age, we start to realize that most people are there to leverage themselves, to make a gain in some fashion. And while there are some amazing friends out there, and there are some truly authentic people, the fact is, as they say, once bitten, twice shy, And once you get that happens to you once, twice, 5 times, and you start to realize that the authenticity in the workspace is all false. Most of it is nonsense. And while they show up to be friendly, they're not friends. See, that's a differentiation a lot of us have to start understanding. See, because friendly is there as part of the job, expectation. The idea is to be friendly, professional. And of course, some people, it's quite easy to go on a misguided judgment and of course assume that it's more than, just being friendly, that they are almost the start of a friendship, because maybe they're friendly, but then you chat about the weekend, you share personal stuff, you head off for lunch together, and you realize that, or you start to realize that maybe they were our friends. Yeah, I think we're friends. Only to find out once the circumstances shift, they pretty much vaporize. And not necessarily on your part. I mean, I've personally seen it. I've reached out numerous cases where people that you assume were your friends, you assume they were your buddies, and you left on good terms, and everything was good, and you assume that, yeah, this is going to continue on. But as soon as you leave, the point of leverage leaves as well with you, and all of a sudden they just ghost you. So the idea of friendship becomes much more superficial as we age. We realize that we don't have the time that we once did. The time is valuable. A lot of people, quite often, like myself, are generally better as a loner anyway. I mean, I do like having a good quality friend near me, and I've had great friends in the past. But I'm just as happy being alone, if we're being honest. And a lot of times, that's one of the contributing factors to, as we age, you find more solace in being alone and in learning more about you and yourself. And that's more about what is, where you find your happiness is that loneliness, that quiet time. Because life is noisy, busy, chaotic at the best of times. Especially once you have a young family, you got kids running around, and you go to work and it's chaotic at work, and panic mode sets in, and the boss telling you to get this, get that. I need to deliver. Oh, you've got this report done. And you just keep moving. And all that chaos means just, whoa, pump the brakes. So any time you have now is much, much more valuable. But that's why as we age, and now as a 55-year-old, you're finding that friendships, unless they're absolutely uplifting, unless they make you feel good, and unless you make them feel good, and you can tell it's a mutual experience, that it's not one-sided, and I'm not doing everything and they don't call me back and all I do is chase them around, well, that's not truly a friendship. But as we age, we realize unless it's truly a two-sided, healthy relationship, then we don't be bothered anymore. We see through that nonsense. We start to see through that ridiculous business that, work really is just being friendly and not friends. Some people are just shy. They'd much rather just hang out alone. They don't know what to say. They feel awkward. Many people just put themselves in the wrong positions as well. Maybe go to the wrong environments and then just wonder why they have no friends. I mean, you've got to get out sometimes, get involved, get engaged in different activities, learn some new fun hobbies. That's a great way to meet friends. But sometimes people don't necessarily put themselves in the best environments. If you're always working heavy construction and it's noisy and you're on the jackhammer all day long, and all of a sudden you retire, you probably didn't socialize much at work. Then you get home and you're still vibrating and all you want to do is wind down and you never leave the house. It's going to be tough to meet friends. But again, when you're in a corporate space, you're in a quiet office, you have this perception of, there's quiet, there's serenity, we can chat, and it's easy to make friends until you realize, of course, they're not truly friends. But while some people value quiet and solace, and I can certainly appreciate there are great times when you're spending alone, and I really do value those times alone. Like I value my walks and these talks with each and every one of you. I value that time. It's special to me because I don't know how much longer. And I think back to my father who very, very sadly had dementia, and where does that transition time become? If I was a fly, unfortunately, I wish I could understand more and dig deeper into his mind as that transition happens, from that transition of understanding and having the full awareness of life and those around you to the point where you actually have no idea what's happening. That transition space. And for me right now, having that quiet solace time is so important. But it is also very rewarding to have a friend or two, a good quality friends or two. See, because having friendship is not about quantity, it's about quality. And so as we walk down today, we see these foggy weather here. You see the fog back there, and it's very, very foggy straight ahead of me here as well. As you can see, I'm just going to show you that. The point is, I use this as metaphors. We all know I love metaphors. But the point is, what I'm trying to get at is, metaphorically speaking, this is almost like friendship. And I want to try to talk about this from that perspective of, we're in this fog, we're in this dark area, and we're wondering where these friends went. And we've had these previous historical experiences where people have used us. And once they got what they needed, they moved on. They sort of sap the energy out of us. But it's those that bring us up and uplift us all of a sudden crack through, and all of a sudden you get blue sky. You see that blue sky over there? That's what it's like once you meet a good quality friend. Because as I've said, friendship is really not about quantity, it's about quality. So having a good one or two really good friends that you keep in touch with are the ones that matter most. One thing that I've learned, first of all, social media is such a false sense of everything. False sense of security, false sense of hope. Really get out there and enjoy life. This is why I go for my walks. I love the outdoors. If you listen to the birds, listen. Isn't that lovely? You can't hear that from in your living room. No, not at all. So if there's one thing that I learned, and if you're looking for that one or two quality friends, sometimes it takes a little work. Doesn't mean it's hard work, but I mean, take some ownership in that. If you want, what I found personally is getting out there, be more friendly, more open-minded to change, to people's ideas. I've met people in the past too that they're always right. It didn't matter. You said their weather was they heard the forecast was gonna be sunny. They said, well, I heard it's gonna rain in the afternoon. You say, I think that color looks kind of bluish. They're gonna say, well, it's actually more green. And it doesn't matter what you say, there's people that are always contrary. And I've had those moments where I felt like, oh, why did I even bother saying that? Now I look like a jackass because, they said something and all I'm trying to be is contrary and I'm trying to oppose their views. And that's what I learned quickly was, instead of always trying to be right, accept people for their views, accept people for what they see in life and how they see life in their own way. And sometimes what I found is you quite often learn some things when you accept their beliefs, their thoughts, and their openness. Then as you open up and you're more engaging and actively listening, you'd be surprised how some of those good friends can develop. Getting involved in, clubs and organizations, getting involved in maybe learning new tricks and new classes to maybe you want to learn something, I don't know, pottery 101. It doesn't matter. There's classes, there's things you can learn for personal skill development, which can help you maybe later in life, possibly as well. Skill development, which maybe as you transition, of course, into retirement, maybe that transitions. Maybe you take a photography class, you meet some people there. And you know what? I can transition into a hobby as you retire. So then you can even eventually sometimes monetize that. But with that said, quite often you can meet people in places like that. Of course, as I've said, meeting them is one part of it. Getting out there, being open-minded, being more positive, and honestly, just open and actively listening to what people have to say. Conversely, it kind of works both ways. It's a little give, it's a little take, but at the end of the day, the bottom line is friends come a lot easier than you would think, but you have to be out there. Social media isn't going to get you there. What can get you there is just being actively trying new things and just open-minded, smile on your face. Because I went through that time. I went through that time where I felt like, I was scowling all the time and, I was going through a lot of crap. I was dealing with the loss of a couple of parents, getting forced into early retirement. Things just weren't always the way I was hoping they would be. And for a while there, one could say maybe I even had a bit of a chip. But as I sort of transitioned out of that and I became more open-minded, and I sort of flipped and became a little bit more positive, I started to realize that, it's a lot easier to have those conversations, a lot easier to become, have those friendly people in your lives, and people just are a lot more open and interested in you when you portray yourself as a positive, open-minded person. And I was going through that time. I went through that time. I went through that journey. And I want to continue talking about this because this channel is truly not just about a once and done retirement, this, that, and the other in the top 5. This is really about a journey from the transition out of your work to what it's like with friendship and loss of family and change and, health and experiences and retirement. That's life as we age. All of us, we age. And life changes. It changes sometimes for the much better, sometimes not as much. But what I also realize is once you meet these friends, and again, for lack of metaphorically speaking, as we see, we're cracked out here and they see the blue sky, it's absolutely gorgeous. And we're sort of leaving the fog behind. As you can see that foggy back there, all that fog, we're kind of leaving behind us. Isn't that quite the metaphor? So it's to meeting of friends, and maybe a lot of you don't even want friends, because a lot of times friends have historically let you down, disappointed you, isolated you. When you thought you had a friend and they left you in a lurch and you needed them, there's nothing more disheartening when you have that scenario. But one thing that I've learned about that too is having friendship is a two-way street. And sometimes, I'm racing through traffic or I'm even trying to not race through traffic. I'm trying to navigate through traffic. And I see these guys blowing past me in traffic, and he's cutting and dodging and weaving through traffic around everybody and cutting everybody off. And he's trying to race to the next intersection, keep going. And I think, okay, he's a road rager. This guy is going crazy. He's just a nutty driver. I better stay away. But then I also start thinking now my attitude is shifting to, what if he's trying to get home? Maybe there's an emergency at home. Maybe there's a problem. Maybe he's hurt and he's trying to get to the hospital. Maybe he got bad news and he's just trying to, go meet a family member. I don't know. We don't know unless we really understand that person. So if there's one thing that I've learned is being more open-minded and try to understand that everybody has something. They have a cross to bear. They've got something going on in their lives. And with that said, sometimes those friends that we knew they were good friends and we were maybe disappointed by a response at one point and then we sort of gave up on that. Sometimes they're going through things. Sometimes maybe they got a health situation or some other problem. And so the idea of having friends is very, very important to some people, because that's what gives you motivation to get up in the morning, get moving. But sometimes I find that meeting friends can be a challenge. The bigger challenge is keeping friends, and a good quality friend that meets you in the middle, that uplifts you, that brings you in a good state of mind, that you feel good about meeting every single, maybe once a week for a coffee or getting together for that hobby, giving them a phone call, meeting up with a good buddy at the mall, whatever that is. Having that good friend is an amazing experience, one in which, quite often I used to kind of take for granted myself, openly and honestly. But when you have that good friend and they're there for you and you're there for them, you quickly realize that, a good friendship is absolutely amazing. And while they are hard to find, because quality friends these days are fewer far between, as everybody's in their busy lives trying to get to where they've got to be, the fact remains is having a good quality friend that's there for you is so meaningful. How do you keep these friends? Well, I quickly realized that it's not just meeting a friend and giving them a phone call and then say, we'll talk soon, and then not talk to them in 18 months. Is actually reaching out regularly, getting together, having those conversations. And social media is a great place to touch base, but you really should meet out for a cup of coffee, get back into that hobby, and reaching out. Be that person that makes that first phone call. Be that person to reach out and say hi. Be that person to openly and actively listen to what their issues are, and be there, above all, be there when they need your help. If they need to move or they need to do something and you're willing to, and you have the means, give them a hand. That's what I learned. That's why friends are fewer and far between, because in today's day and age, most people just sort of give up on the idea, as most people just truly do seem to be in it for themselves. That said, there are, and it's inspiring and hopeful to know that there are truly a few authentic people left. You just got to search through the chafe. Hope you all enjoyed the conversation today, everybody. Hope you have a wonderful day. And guess what? Look at the foggy day. It's absolutely amazing, and I couldn't resist this wonderful chat. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Talk to you soon, everybody. Bye-bye.